The main problem behind this method is that it is a way to just feel good in the end, to keep a clear conscience and be able to say, in the US, something is being done. Coca leaves are being fumigated in Latin America.
The important topic is, what right do the United States have to do anything in Colombia? Well, answer, it has as much right as China has to do something in the United States, namely zero. I mean, for example, does Colombia have a right to bomb Kentucky and North Carolina? That's where they produce the most lethal drugs in the world. I mean, the number of people who die from tobacco is, last figures I looked at, was about 25 times as high as from all drugs combined. But no one believes that other countries have a right to carry out fumigation in North Carolina and Kentucky. And that would be considered outrageous, even if it did work.
For 20 years, fumigating illicit crops in Peru and Bolivia has only resulted in moving coca up and down the Andes. Despite this useless achievement, the U.S. government has made aerial spraying by U.S. contractors the focus of its anti-drug policy in Colombia.
Fumigation itself uses the herbicide glyphosate as its specific fumigation element or chemical.
There were a number of people in the Colombian government that were concerned about the use of this chemical, and they wanted to know what we knew about it.
Glyphosate is probably the most commonly used commercial herbicide in the world. It is used legally in well over 100 countries, including the United States of America.
Glyphosate that's being applied in Colombia is not 100% glyphosate. There's a great deal of other material in that to disperse it and to spread it. Toxicity can be enhanced by the amount of surfactant. And then also you have to think about the altitude at which this material is being sprayed, because the higher you fly, the greater the dispersal, the wider the dispersal. You cannot keep that material that you're really blasting over the surface of the earth right in a straight, clean ribbon or strip. That's impossible. This material is going to blow around.
My name is Tulio Santander. I was living on a farm in the Putumayo, on a farm over there where they fumigated everything I had. They fumigated my crops of bananas. Bananas not for sale, but for my family's subsistence. I have a wife, I have kids, and they also fumigated the yucca, that fish.
I know now there is concern because there seem to be more skin problems in people who've been exposed to the spraying, who were there when they were actually sprayed upon.
We're engaged in a policy now of aerial fumigation, which I think is a human rights violation, to put it bluntly. I mean, planes are flying up high and spraying, these dangerous chemicals, and not only on coca plants, but on legal crops. They're spraying wells where people get their water to drink. The spray is hitting, young children, babies, pregnant women, elderly.
Well, those are criticisms we've heard a lot, but I don't know that that's entirely true. I would have to look at that more closely to respond fully to it now.
20 to 30 meters up, ideally.
They often spray just 20 to 30 meters up in the industrial-sized fields. It is true that particularly when they're spraying heroin or poppy crops, where you're in a more mountainous area, that sometimes they have to fly at higher elevations.
The Monsanto Chemical Corporation was commissioned by the U.S. State Department to provide a defoliant that could be spread on large areas of forest from a safe altitude above insecure territories. The result was Roundup Ultra, a modification of the commercially available Roundup weed killer, with a new formulation which has not been disclosed. With rain and humidity, these deadly chemicals are running into the water supply of the entire Amazon basin, an issue that affects not only Colombia, but parts of Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil as well.
I have, however, not seen any credible scientific evidence, none, that has suggested that this has a harmful environmental impact.
One of the earlier studies discovered that Roundup or glyphosate actually interferes with enzyme systems in the thyroid, in the brain, the liver, and the pancreas. And one of the studies actually showed that glyphosate caused tumors in the thyroid and also in the pancreas and in the Leydig cells, or the testicles. These are the cells that are critical for sperm production in the male.
I mean, we've been through that before where, we use different herbicides and, I think of Vietnam vets in Agent Orange, and everybody's told that they're fine, that there's no problem, and then later on we find that it's highly correlated to cancer or terrible illness.
Look at the children and the grandchildren of the people who were there, who were exposed. It's a horror story. And we found out that dioxin had a lot of effects on a lot of different systems. But 40 years later, are we going to wait 40 years before we get the truth out of this?
The people in Colombia have every right to be concerned, and I think we have to do it differently.
A few years ago, the RAND Corporation, a very conservative think tank, does a lot of consulting for the military, was commissioned by the Army and by the U.S. Drug Czar's office to do a study called Controlling Cocaine.
They compared several methods of dealing with the drug problem. One method is prevention and treatment. That was by far the most cost-effective. The next one was police measures at home. That, I think, was about 1/7 as cost-effective as prevention and treatment. The next was border interdiction. That was 1/11 as effective. The next was out-of-country operations, like fumigation in Colombia. There, the ratio was 23-1 in favor of prevention and treatment. That's just in terms of cost-effectiveness.
So we are pursuing the least cost-effective method of reducing drug use in the United States, if that is truly what we're concerned about.
It is really strange that both the Colombian and American governments focus their anti-drug efforts on the periphery of the problem and not on its center of gravity. The center of gravity of the problem is the drug traffickers, and they are not attacked.
While the policy of aerial spraying has proven largely ineffective, the production of cocaine has actually doubled over the last 10 years. The question then becomes, why spend billions of dollars on a proven failure and not on domestic prevention rehabilitation programs?
Originally, when the Colombian president came to the United States with the idea for Plan Colombia, it was not primarily a military plan. It was to find alternative crops, it was for economic development. But when it got to the United States, a heavy military stamp was put on it by the Pentagon. So now we have a situation where out of $1.7 billion over the next few years, 80% of it will go for military purposes.